Got you.
I failed one semester of Spanish in high school, thank you. You won't do that again, will you? Okay, Tal is what's up.
What's up?
¿Cómo estás? Is
The proper is como está usted.
okay, whatever.
No, that's all I know. Beyond that,
That's all I know too, Mike. That's
Buenos
okay.
dias.
that and I can count.
Yeah.
Buenos
Yeah.
dias.
I don't even know
That's
what
like the
Buenos
simplest
dias.
part.
That's about it. So we are in chapter 9 of the book of Revelation.
The power chapter.
I made the comment earlier, it's about to get good. But really, it's been good so far, but
Yeah.
this is about to...
Explode.
Yeah, basically God's about ready to take things and just kick it up a notch. A little bit. And what's going to really take place here. But before we really get into this, I just want to make sure, does anybody have any questions on anything in the first 8 chapters? Before we really get into this part of it.
No.
None that I can think of.
Now, John's seeing this in the future.
Yes. Well, that is one of the beliefs, yes. This is a futuristic view. Most people tend to go along with the futuristic view because he says he'll be shown things that are to come. So, but there are others that don't really see it that way. It's one of those things.
What are the other views?
There is a kind of like I forget the exact name of it, it's called like a relative view, where these things are like this. They don't really mean what they are. It's kind of like an
As if.
as-if type thing, yeah. But me personally, I take it as the literal futuristic sense.
I do.
Is how I take this. These things are to come, so I do take them that way.
Some people call it symbolic too.
Yeah, there's a symbolic view,
And
yes.
that's weird to me.
Yeah.
Whatever that means.
Yeah, a lot of people, okay, so the symbolic view is exactly what it sounds like.
It's a symbol.
Everything is just symbolism.
Yeah.
There's no, a lot of people that do the symbolic view don't believe there's any realistic part of it, really. It's just all big symbols, and
Yes.
it's just an an eye-opener in a symbolic state. There are people that believe that. Me personally, when I look through all this, if I were lost in looking at this, there's no way that I would be able to take it as a symbolic view.
That's right.
Because the amount of detail that John goes into, and you got to remember, the amount of detail that John is going in here is only the amount of detail that God is letting him go into.
Right.
This is not everything.
Or if you were lost, you might talk yourself into it being symbolic.
Right.
Yeah.
because you
There's
don't
that
want to
too.
deal with.
Right. You don't want to deal with it, so you'll talk yourself into the symbolic view. But for me, I don't know. I've always been fascinated by this book. I've always been drawn to it, and I was 13 years old and trying to figure it out. It was really the first time I started looking into it, and like I said, every time I read it, though, I find something new. No way do I understand all of it, other than the fact that I believe, and again, remember the phrase, I believe that this is a futuristic outlook. These are things that are going to come, and I also, personally, my belief is parts we're talking about right now, we ain't going to be here for.
Right.
But that's my personal point of view.
And the thing about it is there are things in it. I can see where some people will go symbolic on certain parts.
Yeah.
But when it talks about the Lamb's Book of Life,
Right.
There's things that can't be and don't even make sense as symbolic. What I think, there's a lot of supernatural stuff that's happening in Revelation. But if you go back through other books, some guy parted the whole sea.
Right.
The
Yeah.
the jawbone of an ass was used for what?
Right.
You could throw that out there
Yeah.
and say, well, this book seems like it's like that it's just symbolic. I think it's because there's so much of it like that, but this is the end.
Right.
And I believe in the end, a lot of stuff's gonna happen that you ain't never seen before.
Exactly. Yep.
But I'm
Yeah,
saying-
and you got to remember too, we're really starting to get into the point now where John is seeing exactly that, things he's never seen before.
Right.
So we're going to get used to the phrase "like" or
Yeah.
"as" whenever
And
he's
that's where a lot
describing
of
it,
us get symbolic too, because
Right.
it's that.
because
It definitely says the difference between
Yes.
like as or
yeah.
as
And
if.
the reason for that is because some of the things John is seeing, he has no idea how to describe it.
Right.
So
Never
he's going to
seen it
give
before.
you that description the best he can. That's why, whenever you get that, there are some parts, like just for instance, you might see it has a head like a lion and eagles like and wings like an eagle. He has no idea what he's seeing.
No.
And there are a lot of people that have taken those descriptions and said, do you realize that some of those can be portrayed in things that we personally today see?
Yeah.
You think like an attack helicopter.
Yeah.
Got
Yeah.
the mouth on it and the wings.
Exactly.
And you know that
Yeah. Like a
Israel's
scorpion.
airfield is
Stairs.
underground.
They shoot stairs.
When they come out of the ground.
Right. Yep. So,
I believe every word to be true.
yeah.
Right.
Every word.
And that's what we really have to hold on to. We have to, I mean, me personally, we cannot Chex Mix this thing whenever it comes to the Word of God. You can't
Yeah.
Chex Mix, because what is the one thing about Chex Mix? There's always something in it we don't like, so we're just going to throw it out. You know, we all have that. You can't do that with the Word of God.
No.
You know, you either, my personal viewpoint on it is you're either going to take the whole thing and believe the whole thing, or you might as well not believe in it at all.
When I first read this, first time, it struck fear in me.
Yeah.
God can do all these things.
Exactly.
Am I going, until I realized, am I going to be going through this stuff?
Right.
I mean, it really struck
Yeah.
fear. That's why I read it so many times.
Yeah. All right. So there is a lot that's going to take place here.
Oh, boy.
And we're going to try and explain it the best that I possibly can. But we're getting into the fifth trumpet, which is the beginning of chapter 9. Now, if you remember back to the end of chapter 8, what ended up happening, and I'm just going to go back, I'm going to reread it again. Then John writes down, I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying, woe, saying with a loud voice, woe, 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 to the inhabitants of the earth, by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the three angels which are yet to sound. A warning has taken place as we closed out chapter 8. An angel literally gave out a warning of what is yet to come with the next three trumpet blasts. And now we're going to get into it. The fifth trumpet is the first woe. If somebody would like to read, if we want to break it down so you don't have to read it all, but I want to read the first 12 verses of chapter 9.
And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God on their foreheads. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months. And their torments was as the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man. And in those days shall men seek death, and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men. And they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions. And they had breastplate as it were breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots of many horses running to battle. And they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and their power was to hurt men 5 months. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollon. Apollyon. One woe is past, and behold, there come 2 woes more hereafter.
Okay. So, think back to the Exodus. Remember I said a lot of the trumpet judgments are going to sound the repeat of the Exodus. Whenever Israel came out of Egypt. So here you have a plague of locusts, in a sense. That is how John describes it. And so a lot of people just call it the plague of locusts. And in this vision, it's different than normal locusts. They seem demonic as they come up out of the bottomless pit. And so one thing I want to touch base on real quick here is the word star, in this instance, is not a heavenly star like our sun. Okay? It is, though, a being, so to say. It is actually an intelligent creature. A lot of people say that they believe it is the angel of the bottomless pit. And the reason why they get that is because when you translate all the way back to the Greek and to the Hebrew, the word meaning is different, but there's something else that takes place here. It says, if you notice, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key to the bottomless pit, and he opened it. A lot of people believe that that star is actually the angelic creature that's going to open it. Open the bottomless pit. And there is a long list of names that gets thrown out to who that actually is. And my belief behind it is we see the answer over in verse 11 of who is behind all this. But God allows this to happen. Do we understand that? God is going to allow bad things to happen at this point. He is in full control of what is taking place. And so, but notice the word he in verse 2. Now, the bottomless pit, a lot of people refer to it as a shaft of the abyss, and it's used many times throughout Romans. It's used in Revelation. It's used in Luke. And it indicates that this is the dwelling place of demons, is what the bottomless pit is. So there's that. I mean, we've seen God handling things, but now he's going to allow some demonic activity to take place. Do we get that? So in Luke chapter 8, verse 31, the abyss is the place of demons, or the bottomless pit. These locusts do not feed on vegetation like a normal locust, but they torture people for 5 months. Can you imagine being tortured over and over for 5 months? And the torture is being stung by a scorpion, is what he equates it to. Now, I've never been stung by a scorpion. I don't know if you ever had that problem. I know some people that served over the last time they were over in Iraq, and people were talking about scorpions were a big problem. And one guy actually got stung by one. Now, when it comes to that, well, I'm getting ahead of myself, so hold on. I'm going to get ahead of myself.
My dad got stung by one in Peru. It left a scar on his thumb forever. You know, like he was 19. He still had it when he was 95.
So not everyone, though, is under this plague. Think about that. The Bible clearly tells us there are those that will not be harmed by this plague. And so if you look at verses 4 and 5, it says, and it was commanded that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither the green thing, nor any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads.
Remember all the tribes that was sealed.
That's exactly what this is. This is the 144 that are sealed of God. The 144,000 are protected during all this. Those that are sealed of God. So this equates also back to the later plagues of Egypt. The Lord makes a distinction between his people and those under judgment in Exodus chapter 3. The believers are not appointed for wrath, and they have a seal from God. The limitation of this plague is 5 months, is a warning and an opportunity for repentance. as terrible as this demonic plague is, people will not die from it, but they will wish that they could. We are talking a point in time when people will want to kill themselves, and they will not be able to do so. Death, the Bible clearly states it, death will flee from them. You notice it ain't saying that death is not around. Death isn't taking a vacation. Death is fleeing from the events that are taking place. And why is that? Who has the keys to death and hell? God. Jesus, right?
He gave it to Peter, didn't he?
Yeah. So, God is making it where people cannot die. That is how hard he is trying to get people's attention. And so the leader that has come out of this is in verse 11. In the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon. I think that's how you say it. In the Greek tongue is Apollyon. This is where people get confused on the word apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Dennis.
Well, you know, unless I misheard you, but you said that the locusts wouldn't hurt the people with the seals.
Mm-hmm.
But it says that they can't kill them. They would only torture those people.
Right.
The other people would be killed, but those people, even though they had the seal of God, were going to be tortured, is what it says.
No, whenever you go back and you look at that,
Should not hurt.
it says that it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads.
And then what does it say after that?
And then it says, and to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented. Here,
That's the men with the seals.
No,
it's talking about
everyone
those
else.
without the seal. He's still talking about those without.
Right.
Yeah, here he is still basically what you were seeing, and it kind of blurs together, but here he's telling, basically John is saying where God is saying, look, you cannot touch my 144,000,
Sorry.
but you can have the rest.
Right.
Is essentially what's taking place there. It says it was, and to them it was given that they should not kill them. See, nobody can die. And whenever you get that, it said, in those days shall men seek death and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. Death ain't happening right now. For these 5 months, people just won't die. They can't.
The way it's worded, it says, the men who do not have the seals.
Right.
Right.
That's what they're
Mhm.
referring to. That's what them means in the following verse.
The half of
Them that do not have the seal.
the third of the people will die anyway.
Don't get ahead of me.
He gets ahead of it, you know. But only those men.
You know what that
shall
sounds
not
like?
see.
It's like what we see with the zombies. Doesn't it sound like
Yeah.
zombies?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yes.
Maybe that. Oh, yeah.
So-
no, we won't
Even
go
the
there.
name of Massillon,
That's what it
Apollo,
sounds
you know,
like.
our
Yeah, it does.
So I want you to think about this too. So the leader of the locusts, you could name him Destroyer.
Yes.
That is actually the name that is Abaddon and Apollyon both mean destroyer. And a lot of people take that as, oh, there's the word apocalypse. That's why apocalypse means destruction. That's why apocalypse means that. And apocalypse doesn't mean that.
No.
Apocalypse means basically a revelation, a revealing. And so whenever people do that, this is why. They're taking these names right here, and they're associating them to apocalypse. But they're not the same words.
They're associated with the movies.
Yes, that's exactly what's happening. They're associating it with Hollywood.
Yeah.
Hollywood has made the apocalypse sound like the most devastating thing, when in actual reality, the definition is just a revealing.
Right.
It's not until you get into these words here, Apollyon and Abaddon, that you see the word destroyer. So they actually mean destruction as well. So the physical descriptions, he is an angel or demon, and a lot of people believe if you look at 2 Peter chapter 2, he's referred to there as well, in 2 Peter chapter 2. The physical descriptions of these horrors are appalling. I mean, if we look at the description, and starting in verse 7, let's go back and look at that. Let's look at this description real quick. And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle. And on their heads were, as it were, crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men.
If you read,
Creepy looking thought, ain't it?
Yeah.
you got to remember too, God uses what is here on earth.
Right. Yep.
So it's not something that was created.
Right.
It's what is here.
So, what must be remembered is John is doing his best to describe what he is seeing.
How can you describe something you have nothing associated with?
Right, exactly. And so what he's doing, he is picking out things of his day
Yeah.
and using that as the descriptors. So whenever we look at this, let's just go through some stuff here real quick. Back in verse 3, the word locust, that these creatures come from the abyss or the bottomless pit are described in unusual terms, indicates that they are indeed demonic. Okay? And then in verses 4 and 5, the limitations that God places upon the activities of these creatures show that He is still in full control of the events. That is what I want us to understand. Just because all chaos is happening and the world is literally falling apart does not mean God is not still in control. God's still in complete control, that He is at the point where He can say, I'm going to allow this to happen, but you can only go this far. And so...
See how He used Babylon for Israel.
Mm-hmm.
He raised them
Right.
up.
Yep. And then in verse 6, like we talked about, suicide will be desired. Many people will want to, but death will be impossible.
You know, sometimes people with radiation wish they had dead, you know. I mean, their body is breaking down. So even if you can't die, you'll suffer.
Yep.
So we can, we'll be gone. That's the only thing that's in my heart. We won't be there.
Yeah.
I think this is the guy's last ditch effort to get people to turn to him.
And that's kind of where we're at right here.
Yeah.
Because this is one of the three woes that are coming, and death ain't even happening here.
Right.
You know, it's torture for 5 months, and it's viewed as an opportunity. A lot of people agree that this is God's, one of His final opportunities He's going to have for people to come to salvation.
Well, that theory I think would be true in that it seems like God is at this point saying, you know what, I've tried mercy and grace.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've tried everything I could think of, and here we go. And you got to believe that God's doing this, like anything throughout the history of man. Something's going to happen from it.
Right.
Not nothing, but something is going to happen.
Yeah. Yep.
He's trying to wake them.
Yeah, that's exactly what He's doing. There needs to be a spiritual awakening here, and God is wanting, you know what, I've tried everything else. Is almost what it's like.
It's like when you're kids, you know, you're trying to raise your kids, and they you know, the corner only works so long.
Right. Yep.
And you move away, you try to move to something else. What is it that will get their attention?
Yeah, exactly.
Sooner or later, that little 1-inch belt comes to the belt.
Right.
My
Rachel.
mom used a razor strap,
Rachel
a
keeps
half one, my
hoping.
dad cut it in half.
Rachel keeps hoping they'll bring back punishment in the school.
I will be the first to sign the paper to give them permission.
My mom used to just hand us a paring knife. Let's go cut a switch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The mental
I don't
was
trust my
worse
kids
than
with
the
knives,
whipping. You know? The mental was worse than the whipping.
Yeah, going and getting it.
You look by the river, you got a willow switch. That's even worse.
I used to like this as they broke. They hurt the first 2 times, but they were
You got a system
See,
about it.
You can tell what he was. He's all figured out.
done. My mom used to call me Dennis the Meanest.
I get it.
Oh.
So, like I said, in verse 7 and 10, or 7 through 10, in describing these creatures, John often has to use the words like and as. It's because he doesn't know what he's seeing. He's doing the best he can. And in verse 10, we see, and they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and the power was to hurt men 5 months. Now, I gave you a little description of how a scorpion works. So, 2 glands in the tail of a scorpion emit a poison that produces a painful, but usually not a lethal wound for us. For their defense, and most of the things that a scorpion is killing, it'll do the job. But for us, there are people that'll take this because of the descriptions, and they look at things today. And some people link this to, and I've tried to make this connection, I cannot make this connection. But there are people out there that'll say that this, in their mind, could be possibly talking about some form of a chemical warfare. And John could be seeing the locusts that he is describing coming up and out could be planes taking off, and what he's seeing is the sting could actually be bombs dropping, and somehow relates to chemical warfare. There are people that make that stretch. Like I said.
But nowadays, you could probably smooth that a little more to these little robot
Drones.
drones,
right,
with little sharp
Yeah.
edges on it that would literally come towards you and just.
right. But the only reason why I give you that, what people think there, is because what I don't want to do from here on out is get hung up on the likes and the as.
Yeah.
Right.
Because we could spend an entire hour just talking about what we think he is seeing here, trying to describe it in our own mind, but we don't need to worry about it.
No, and this is very explainable, because anybody, you asked me about the scorpions. Okay, so I didn't really see that. Seen a lot of snakes, but I seen some bugs I ain't never seen anywhere else.
Right.
And if I had to explain them to you, I'd have to say, well, they kind of look like part of a butterfly, and we do this all the time in life. It's not like this is some extraordinary thing, how do I describe how hot it is? Well, it's like driving down the road with a furnace in the front of the car that's blowing heat on you the whole. It's not abnormal.
Right.
This is something that he's not seen before, and he's doing the best he can to explain it.
We even go as far as doing that type of a description with how we feel. When you are completely drained and worn out, I feel like I've been hit by a Mack truck.
Yeah.
Now, please do not use that phrase unless you've been hit by a Mack truck, because how do you know what it feels like unless you've been hit by a Mack truck?
I'm pretty sure it's worse than how you're describing how you feel right now.
You couldn't have been hit by a Mack truck, because you wouldn't be able to be here to describe it.
This is what he looks like
Yeah,
when he gets hit by a mattress.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't know how you feel.
yeah.
Josh.
Since death is taken out, will there be, will animals be able to die for meat and stuff?
So,
Always think about food.
Yeah.
right? If death is taking out, nothing can die.
Right.
Nothing will be able to die. So, you are talking about the possibility of 5 months.
I have never in all my life heard anybody ask that question.
Right? I mean, kind of there for a second, it threw me off, and then I'm like, wait a minute. Tell you what, I was thinking about food.
It's a great zombie apocalypse.
Right? But, uh-oh.
Started something.
Nothing can die. So what about plants?
Plants are specifically not even affected by this.
It says
Yeah.
that.
It
Okay.
says
In one of the opening verses, don't touch the greens.
So
And,
what animals can't die. Plants are not going to be affected.
Mhm.
What are people eating?
They're eating live animals.
Vegetarian.
It's a zombie.
there is a belief out there, and a lot of people have examined this and wondered, does starvation begin to take hold, and you have that starvation feeling, but you will not die of starvation.
Yeah, because you can't die.
You can't die, so you are literally going to be completely malnourished, miserable, and all the effects of that.
That's crazy.
Though you know, it doesn't actually mention anything about animals anywhere in that, whether they live, die, or
Right.
whether they're pestered or.
And the only reason why we can make the assumption maybe is because death is fleeing. I mean, animals, it's hard to say, but my best guess is, well, if death is fleeing.
But it says death will flee
Right.
from them, the ones
Right.
desiring to die.
Yeah.
So it still doesn't tell you whether it affects the animals or not.
Yeah.
So we don't know.
Right, exactly.
I don't worry about that.
You don't worry about that.
I don't worry about
From
As
any
here
long
on
as-
out, that's all you're going to hear
Right.
from him. For the
As
next
long as
20
TOV is not affected, he is good to go.
We'll be gone.
We don't have to worry.
Oh, gosh.
Soon I'll be talking to fairy tale.
That's why Howard couldn't teach this book.
Yeah.
I'm here to teach the book of Revelation, but I really don't care about it.
He jumped from the first chapter to the last
That's why I look
chapter.
about it.
Oh, gosh.
It doesn't cross my threshold, so.
All right, so before we get into the sixth trumpet, the fifth and sixth trumpet judgments are use some common Old Testament and contemporary symbolism. They really do. In the fifth, there's a plague of locusts, a calamity which came all too often in the Middle East. They always have that issue.
Yes.
In the sixth, there's a plague of horsemen similar to the Parthian warriors who threatened Rome from the east. The eighth plague of Egypt was the locust, while Joel describes an army invasion in terms of locusts, which is clear background for this vision. So there's Old Testament reference that John is pulling from as well as he's seeing this. So what is one of the things that as people we are taught? If you don't learn from your history, you are bound to repeat it.
Right.
So that is sort of, one person I read, and I forget who it was, said that that's kind of what's happening here, just God is taking it to a whole new scale. You know, if you think about it, have we really learned from our past mistakes? Have we? No, because what was the purpose of the flood? And where are we at today? You know, we're right back to where we were. There are a lot of people out there. I love hearing these people talk, and there are a lot of people that talk this way are kind of around Howard's age. And they say we are living in the days as it was Noah. They say stuff like that because and it's like, well, were you around for Noah? You know, but it seems like it's always that generation that says it, and it's because what they're getting at is they feel like our world is at the exact same point today as you read about when it was Noah's day.
Right.
Think about Sodom and Gomorrah.
Right.
America built one, did we not? Vegas. So did we really learn from our past mistakes? Absolutely not. And so here, God has done all he can up to this point of, look, I've tried to show you, I've tried to teach you, I've tried to show you these things. Look, you keep repeating yourself. Now I'm going to handle it.
You know something interesting I thought about, kind of to go along with what I preached this morning. God, he's releasing these things to happen. But think about that statement. What that really means is he's been holding them back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
sin entered into the world. These things that are happening now that he's releasing, if it wasn't for God, I believe this stuff would have happened a long
Yes.
That's
time ago.
absolutely it.
He's been holding it back. He's just now, after what you just said, what we've said here, after I've tried everything else, you're not getting it, you're not understanding what is coming, what's going to happen if you don't accept my son. And he's just releasing the natural effects of what sin does to a world.
That's
You know,
exactly it.
Children of
It's like
Israel.
we touched on in Sunday school with his long suffering. You could study that forever.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The Jewish, when they come across the Red Sea, you know, if they listened to God, he was going to send, bees out in front of them and drive all of them out of there. They wouldn't even have had to wage war.
Right.
Just everything would have been left.
I mean, I think about exactly what you were talking about in your sermon. It's Jesus making intercession. And God is showing his patience with Jesus saying, give them more time. And eventually the day is going to come where God is going to say, they've had long enough.
Yeah.
And then this will happen.
They'll
But
bring your people home.
Yeah.
They'll bring your people home.
they'll look right at him, say, go get my church. I believe we'll be gone. I gotta stress that part. I believe. That quick.
8 foot.
I'll be shooting up out of my 13-foot deep hole. That's right. But I'm going to be standing up ready to go while all of you are laying down resting. I'll be perched and ready. I'm never going to live that down for telling you that, am I?
Never. We'll
All
be
right.
watching for you.
Well, that might mean he's gonna come before you're in the ground.
That's possible.
That's very possible. And I'm taller than the rest of you. So I'm going to jump start this way, too.
But what if people are in a taller building than you are?
Oh, here he goes. Hey, man.
Josh.
Here comes Josh.
I'll
Ruining
be-
my
I'll be
dream.
up on the roof, so.
Right?
All right.
All right, so the visual description should not be pushed into. Now, this is one guy, and I want to read you his quote because I found it appalling. And I'm not going to give you his name, but I want to give you one of the most appalling quotes that I've ever read in my life. It says, the visual description should not be pushed into excessive literalism. Okay? This is a guy that stands behind his symbolic views. For example, he says, Jesus is seen in chapter 1 with a long priestly garment. In chapter 6, he is slain and victorious lamb or ram. While in chapter 19, he rides a white horse into battle with a sword coming out of his mouth. Each vision represents a truth about Jesus' person and office, but we should try not to paint a picture of his physical nature. Now, I'm going to paint my picture. All right? I'm going to paint my picture. I read this, and I think I was actually sitting down, and I was studying this at work, and I said this out loud, and everybody just kind of looked at me. Because I went, I'm going to paint a picture. All right? Because that's exactly, these representations aren't just representations. This is who Jesus is.
Amen.
Whenever you think about that, he says he is seen in chapter 1 with a long priestly garment. There's a reason for that. Because who is Jesus? He is viewed as the high priest. And then in chapter 6, he is shown slain and victorious as a victorious slain ram or lamb. Why is that? Because that's exactly who he is. He was the perfect lamb that came and was slain for the sins of this earth. And he rose victoriously. So whenever I read that, it's like, I'm going to paint my picture. Okay, but then we even get even better into that. What does it say? In chapter 19, we'll get there. We're getting there. But spoiler alert, he's going to ride on a white horse into battle with a sword coming out of his mouth. And you know what? I believe that in its entirety because if my Jesus wants to spit a sword out of his mouth, he can do it because he is God.
Yes.
It's not a symbol that we're seeing here. It needs to be pushed into excessive literalism because people need that awakening. They need to know, yeah, this is literally going to happen.
A lot of times, the visual is much easier to comprehend too. If you just read, some people that are, avid readers can really read and make all that as it gets explained in just using regular words. But most of us, it's when you see it. It's like watching, we read that Jesus was beat and whipped and all that, but how many people watch the Passion of the Christ?
Yeah.
What the visual do for you?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
what's happening here.
Yeah.
It's giving the visual of exactly what he is, just so you really comprehend it.
All right, so there are any questions on the fifth judgment or the fifth trumpet? It is 9 till we ain't even going to start the next trumpet.
Right.
Yeah.
See?
I know.
What happened?
Yep. We will pick up the next trumpet next week.
That's,
Howard already gave the spoiler to it.
Yeah, I'm always thinking about the angels that released on the Euphrates,
Doesn't matter, you're not gonna be there.
We're
Yeah,
not there
it don't
yet,
matter.
dear. Don't,
Now,
You're not gonna be
it's
there.
the
you're not gonna be there.
now next week,
We'll pick up there next week.
it's not often that I use the Apocrypha, but next week I'm going to quote the Apocrypha. Like I said, it's a very historically accurate book, but there are some events that are going to take place here that is actually also Enoch wrote about in the first book of Enoch in the Apocrypha. So I kind of want to read to you what he said regarding some things that are going to happen, take place, because it's going to tie all together.
When you say the Apocrypha, is that the Catholic?
No,
No.
these are the historical books that are not included into the Bible.
Those books are in the Catholic.
They are in the Catholic Bible,
In
yes.
their
Sherry's
Bible.
mentioned the Enoch.
Yes.
He said Enoch's not in our Bible, but it's a book of a book.
Yeah, there are actually, I think there's 2 books of Enoch.
yeah, and it was one of Jesus' brothers who talked about him.
So I will be quoting that next week. When we get to that point, I will let you know. That way you know that I am off of Bible and into history. I want to make it a clear point there. But we will be doing the 6th trumpet. I like this part. Not the death part, but where we're going here.
Yeah.
We're almost to chapter 11. We are almost halfway through.
Yeah.
We're almost halfway through. So at this time, I will come to you for prayer requests. Do remember